As-salaam-alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most incredible figures in all of history, Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiyallahu anhu. He was a military commander who was simply put unparalleled. We're talking about over 50 major battles, and he never lost a single one. His life is just an absolute masterclass in leadership, faith, and the true power of redemption.
But here's the thing that gets you right from the start, the central paradox of his life. And he said it himself. This man, who wanted nothing more than to die a martyr on the battlefield, ended up dying in his bed. This quote, it just pulls you right into the heart of his story. It's about a man whose destiny was even greater than he could have ever imagined. Now, to really understand the man who became known as the Sword of Allah, we first have to meet the man who was once Islam's most formidable opponent. So yeah, let's go all the way back to the beginning.
Khalid was born into the Banu Makhzum. Now you gotta understand, these guys were the military elite of the Quraysh tribe in Mecca. His father was a man of huge influence, and Khalid, from the time he was a kid, was basically groomed for command. He mastered horsemanship, wrestling, swordsmanship. He was the total package, the very embodiment of Arab nobility and warrior skill.
So as a leader of the Makhzum, it makes sense that Khalid was right at the forefront of the opposition to the early Muslims. And he wasn't just some soldier in the ranks, no. He was a key commander in all the major conflicts, using his brilliant strategic mind to try and stop this new Muslim community at every single turn.
And right here, we see that genius in action. At the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims were literally moments away from a decisive victory. But Khalid, with his incredible tactical vision, he spots one tiny mistake. The Muslim archers left their post, and bam, he pounced on it. He led this devastating cavalry charge from the rear that completely flipped the script. It was an absolute masterclass in military strategy.
But, history and faith, they had other plans for Khalid. His journey was about to take one of the most dramatic turns imaginable, leading him right to the very people he had been fighting against. And the turning point really began with these words from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He asked Khalid's brother about him, recognizing the incredible potential, the brilliant mind, even in his staunchest opponent. This message, when it got back to Khalid in a letter, it was a powerful catalyst. It planted a seed in his heart. And then he had a dream, a really powerful one. He saw himself walking out of this dark, narrow, barren wasteland and into a huge, green field that was just flooded with light. I mean, the symbolism was impossible to miss. He was leaving the darkness of disbelief and stepping right into the light of Islam. So the path was set. After the peace treaty of Hudaybiyah opened the door, and with the Prophet's question and his own dream on his mind, Khalid made the journey to Medina. He stood right there, in front of the man he had fought against, and pledged his loyalty. And he was welcomed with open arms. His entire past just forgiven in an instant.
So, with his conversion, all of that military genius was now dedicated to a brand new cause. In this next chapter of his life, this is where the legend of Saifullah, the Sword of Allah, was truly forged.
And wow, his first test as a Muslim commander was a serious trial by fire. At the Battle of Mu'tah, a tiny Muslim force of 3,000 men found themselves facing a massive Byzantine army of 200,000. I mean, just look at those numbers. The odds weren't just bad, they were completely and utterly impossible.
So when the three appointed Muslim commanders were martyred one right after the other, the army looked to Khalid. He knew a straight-up fight was suicide. So instead, he engineered one of the most brilliant tactical withdrawals in all of history. He used pure psychological warfare, swapping his flanks around, kicking up dust clouds to make the enemy think a massive wave of reinforcements was arriving. This incredible ruse bought just enough time for him to save the entire Muslim army from what should have been total annihilation.
And let's be clear, this was no timid retreat. Khalid was right in the thick of it, fighting with such incredible ferocity that it's famously said 9 swords broke in his hand that day. It's just this unbelievable image of his personal courage, even while his mind was busy saving the entire army.
When word of this amazing feat got back to Medina, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave Khalid the title he would carry for the rest of time, Saif Allah, the Sword of Allah. It was like this divine endorsement of his new role as Islam's greatest protector.
And from that day forward, his career was just a highlight reel of legendary victories. He unified Arabia during the Ridda Wars, he spearheaded the conquest of Persian Iraq, and then, in his absolute tactical masterpiece at the Battle of Yarmouk, he just shattered the mighty Byzantine army, completely ending Roman rule in Syria for good.
But Khalid's greatest battle wasn't against the Persians or the Byzantines. No, it was a test of his own soul, a moment that would prove, beyond any doubt, where his true loyalty and sincerity really were. At the absolute height of his fame, the new caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, did something shocking. He dismissed Khalid from his command. And as Umar explained, it wasn't because of any anger or any mistake Khalid made. It was because the people had started to glorify him, to put their faith in him for victory instead of in Allah. It was a tough but really necessary decision to protect the faith of the community.
So how did Khalid respond? No arguments, no pride, no resentment, just simple, profound, humble obedience. He immediately accepted the demotion and just kept on fighting as a regular soldier with the same passion he had as a general. This moment, honestly, more than any victory on the battlefield, proved his sincerity, his ikhlas, that he was fighting for God, not for his own ego or his own glory.
So when you put it all together, what is the final legacy of this incredible person? Well, it's one forged not just in brilliant strategy, but in a deep, unwavering faith.
Let's start with the numbers, because they are just mind-boggling. Over 50 major battles and not a single defeat. His tactics, his use of speed and mobility, it was so far ahead of his time that military historians today still study his campaigns. But after a whole lifetime of conquest and victory, look at what he left behind when he passed away. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No big houses, no hoarded treasures. The only things he owned were his warhorse and his sword, and he dedicated even those to the cause of Islam. His entire life was his inheritance to the world.
And this really brings us to the final, essential question his life asks all of us. Khalid won every single battle he ever fought on a battlefield, but maybe his greatest victory, the one that truly defined him, was the one he won inside himself. That day he submitted his ego to a higher purpose. So what really is the true measure of victory?
O Allah, make us love and respect the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and guide us to follow their sincerity and their dedication.